What's up, lads and ladettes? Dakota Griswold of GNGU here, and I asked you guys to give me some questions because this channel up till now has seemed like it was only based around Nintendo, and that's just not the case. So I asked you guys to give me some of your best questions, and we're gonna see what you gave me so I can let you guys get to know me a little bit better, and you get to know what to expect from the channel. So let's get to the first questions. The first question comes from my man, Darren Zeus May on Facebook. And he says, which controller design do you think was the best overall? Which was the worst? Well, Darren, I gotta say that, first of all, it's kind of a two-part question for me. Two-part answers, I should say. And my first one would be Nintendo 64 as one of the worst controllers. Because, you see, it was kind of hard for me to hold. I was pretty young. I think I was around maybe 8 and 10, something like that, maybe a little older, and I just did not like the way to hold the controller. I back then was trying to just play 2D platformers, side-scrolling platformers, because when it came to these 3D games, it was too hard for me to really understand and get used to it, you know, with the analog stick and the C buttons and everything. It was just too much for me. It's not that I couldn't process it. I guess you could kind of say I was just lazy. I just thought it was just a little too complicated. And then later on, implemented was a double analog for other games. And so, you know, that goes into my other answer as far as worst controller. And I'm going to go ahead and say the PS3 controller, because I did not like the 6-axis. The controller was too light. And I was not really a fan of the PlayStation controller from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 3 in general, because I think the analog sticks were a little too close for me. And there was often times where I would, you know, maybe even scratch myself. Not saying my fingers were long, my fingernails were long. I'm not Wolverine or anything, but I just thought that they were too close. My hands are a little bigger, and I just didn't, and I also thought it was a little too light. And given the fact that my hands are a little bigger, let's just say we'll lead that into what was some of my best controllers. Well, I want to say two for the best, because they're actually kind of similar. First of all, I want to say the Xbox One. The Xbox One has the perfect amount of weight, and it actually has a ton of different options for controllers, and they're first party at that. And one of my favorite ones were the Luna white ones with the gold D-pad and the gold triggers, and it had the rubber grips, and it just felt amazing. I played that thing until it broke on me and it just stopped working. And I played most of my hours on my Xbox, and I really feel like it was just due to the comfort of the controller, and it actually was a bit more engaging in the fact that it could not slip out of my hands no matter how intense the gaming sessions were. And then leading on to the next favorite controller, bit more of a newer controller, and it's not even completely a year old as of the recording of this video, and that's the Nintendo Pro controller. I just cannot argue with it. It just feels very comfortable, very perfect. It's only slightly different than the Xbox One controller, but it just fits comfortably. It's very similar, of course, but it's still pretty comfortable. It has HD rumble, and I don't really know what much to say about it. It's a comfortable controller. It's fun to control with. It makes games a lot easier on a Nintendo Switch. It actually makes you appreciate it a little more, given the fact that, one, it costs so much. Two, you don't have that right out of the box. You actually just have the Joy-Con grip. And the Joy-Con grip isn't a bad controller, but it just isn't a Nintendo Switch Pro controller or an Xbox One controller. So, yeah, you know. The next question comes from Alexander Wright. And I want to say, Alex, you asked me a good few questions. You asked me a ton, because I guess you saw that everybody wasn't giving me a lot of questions. So you just said, let me just give this guy a lot of questions. Now, Alex, he gave me 12 questions, and I answered only a few of them, but they were all really good questions, and nobody actually seemed to be participating as of yet. And I'm hoping to get more of a following and help this channel grow, because I want, to expand. So I want you guys to sit back, relax, and enjoy some of these questions that I got from Alexander Wright as you get to know me furthermore. And the first question comes from him. He says, with the evolution of fighting games from the 90s to now, do you find yourself enjoying playing them more now or back in the day? Why? Well, honestly, back in the day, I wasn't really a fighting game fan. and not even as much now. But back in the day, I just used to get beat down by my friends all the time who actually looked at fighting games and the technicalities of them. And even back then, I want to say fighting games were a little cheap. Like just playing games with my brothers and his friends. And I was a younger guy when Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 was out. And it was kind of cheaty and spammy, if you want to say. My brother used to get me in the corner of the game and constantly sweep me, and I had no idea how to counter that. And that kind of turned me off from fighting games. And the fact that I never really mastered Marvel vs. Capcom 1 to 2. And I just sucked at them. And my best friend used to come to the house and beat me down all the time. And that's why I really didn't even want to tell people that I played fighting games, because they was always beating me down. I just was not up for the challenge. As far as today, I became a bit more of a fan because fighting games became a little bit more simpler. And a friend of mine, when Marvel vs. Capcom 3 came over, he taught me how to actually use the combo system, and it just goes from as simple as switching 2 buttons around. And I'm not familiar with which 2 buttons because I'm not really big on fighting games. But on the Xbox, it was the A and the B button. I'm not sure. I think it was high attack, and one of them was just the launch attack. I'm not sure. But when you switch them around, it makes comboing a lot easier. Namely with Dr. Doom, I would hit you with at least 3 foot dives before the combos would stop, you know? So I was actually pretty much a fan of that. And it's starting to get even better with Injustice and Mortal Kombat. And I'm kind of a button master, so this is why I don't play games like Tekken, because that is a little bit more technical, and I would just absolutely suck at that. So now I guess I'm a bit more of a fan because I'm actually starting to understand them. Maybe it's because I'm older, and I just have an appreciation for them. So now, moving on to the next question. Once again, it's Alexander Wright, and he says, do you see arcades making a comeback and being as great or popular as it was in the past? Honestly, I think it's a possibility because, between the age of my age of 20 and here I am 30 now, I've seen a lot of arcades being closed down, and I really think that there's some small places called Yestercades and Barcades here in New York and in New Jersey. And, those places are cool, and it has a lot of the old stuff, and then, they have some of the new stuff, but the new stuff, they really just have the systems there. But what I really think is that with a lot of these fighting games and the resurgence of them, last year was an Injustice, and I believe a year or 2 prior to that was Mortal Kombat X, and this year we have Dragon Ball FighterZ, and heck, Nintendo is even getting an exclusive fighter, what I believe the game is Blade Strangers, and I mean, why not? We have Skullgirls, that's a big following. Why not open arcades and get people to come back in there? And maybe you can even implement some VR in there, Let's get kids in there, get them to stop messing around with these Tide Pods. Maybe stop challenging to each other to these Tide Pod challenges and maybe challenging each other to these high scores, huh? Next question from Alexander. It says, how did video games influence your life growing up? Honestly, it was the only thing I could really get excited for growing up. Up until I was an adult, it was a bit of an escape for me. I was a little antisocial coming up. People that know me could probably say that. But I loved video games. I loved nerd things. I loved my cartoons, some anime, and mostly video games. I remember specifically in '93 when I turned 5. When I was about 5, it was Christmas. And I received Streets of Rage 2. And I played that game for the next 2 to 3 years. I received other games, but nothing else could contend to that. Because Streets of Rage 2 was just everything to me. And I just thought it was absolutely amazing. And video games obviously has shaped my life a lot, given the fact that I have a YouTube channel, given the fact that I have a collection of almost every system I want to say. And I play a lot of Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation. I love so much of this stuff. And honestly, it's kind of hard to have a regular day-to-day conversation with me without me throwing in a video game analogy. So I guess that's an answer. Next question is still from Alexander Wright, and he says, are video game fans as bad as wrestling fans? Honestly, I have to say maybe, because there are purists on both ends. Some people won't play video games that's from the West and like Japan if they don't put the subtitles on. They don't put audio Japanese audio language and subtitles on the game, and they feel like, nah, this isn't the best way to play it. And I think you can actually kind of equate that to wrestling, because a lot of people want to excuse me, a lot of people want to watch just Japanese wrestling and they don't like WWE. They don't like the American style of wrestling because American style is changing too much. When Japanese, they change a little bit when they implement, some people from the West and other territories over, but it's still kind of adult base. When WWE, I think it's maybe because it's a publicly traded company, they have to be a little bit more PC, if you will. And they can't do a lot of the Attitude Era stuff, and a lot of people don't like that. I mean, you got to evolve with the times, guys. And I think the same thing happens with video games, is that so many games are open world, and they realize, and a lot of developers realize, hey, people like open world games, or people like multiplayer games. So let's start making multiplayer everything, or let's make everything open world. I'm not saying I personally necessarily agree with that, but this is just the times that we live in. And I think, yes, both wrestling fans and video game fans can be equally annoying about the things that they actually love. And then let's even talk about wrestling video games. A lot of people are still talking about, I don't like the latest WWE games. And they all suck. It seems this way and it seems that way. And then if you go and look at the New Japan games, they're just, really spaced out, when WWE games have a yearly entry. And they're really spaced out and over in Japan because I guess not everybody has that much of an interest. And over here in the States, really, we don't have many other options, or any options at all, that at least that I know of, other than the WWE 2K annual releases. So we kind of just suck it up. Honestly, I wasn't a fan of the latest one, especially not on the Nintendo Switch, because that was kind of bad. So I didn't even bother. And I honestly want to say, yeah, equally annoying for video game and wrestling fans. Let's get on with the next question. Another question from Alexander Wright, and he says, what are your goals, objectives with your channel, whether it be your subscribers or yourself? And I want to say, before the summer, I want to say maybe by June-ish, I want to have at least 1,000 subscribers. And I know with that, I have to push out some more content. And I'm kind of busy, guys. I do work a job, and I live about an hour and a half commute. Sometimes I'm a little too tired, but I do want to push out more content for you guys. I'm trying to get familiar with the channel, speaking on camera and everything, so I can put out the best content for you guys. And I know I asked you guys to donate to my Patreon. And what are you donating to? Well, I have goals. I want to actually make a complete career out of just talking about video games. Talking about video games, wrestling, TV shows, movies. I love doing these things. This is honestly my passion. And I want to get better for you guys. So if you guys could just leave comments below, tell me what I can do better. I would like you guys to help, because I want to be better. I hope you guys value and appreciate my opinion. And I just want to make a career. I have a job, but this is honestly what I want to do. So guys, why don't you help me live out my dream? And the last question from Alexander Wright, he says, would you consider having guests or doing crossovers with other YouTube or social media personalities in the future? Yeah, I have absolutely nothing against that. I actually am trying to just develop the channel by myself as it is, but I would love to do collabs. I actually have some other friends who actually have YouTube channels, and I have absolutely no problem with doing that. We can help promote each other. We can have fun. And honestly, I feel like with me discussing something with other people, I'm actually kind of a funny guy, and I feel like you guys will get even way more of my personality if I were talking to someone or making collabs. So once again, I have no problem doing that. So if I have any friends that want to do that, who want to be guests, we can sit here, we can talk about it, and we can probably get it going, So let's see what happens. The next question comes from Facebook with my man L. Chambers, and he asks, speaking of Nintendo, even though I know I said, let's not make it too Nintendo-centric, but he did say, speaking of Nintendo, you can speak about how underrated the GameCube was. And honestly, yeah, I think it was a little underrated. The controller was pretty freaking good. The discs were small because I feel like Nintendo was just doing their own thing. The console, if you wanted to take this console to somebody's house, it was a small box and you could just carry it. Now, they made a smaller version of the PS2, but they didn't change the original Xbox. That thing was heavier than a VCR, or as heavy as a VCR. I feel like the GameCube was the most convenient as far as just the system itself. But it had a pretty good library. Pokemon Coliseum, Metroid Prime 1 and 2. It was 2 Zelda games on there. Final Fantasy on there. Excuse me. Eternal Darkness. It was a lot of good games. And I played most games that came out for all systems on the Nintendo GameCube because, I just love Nintendo. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. I love Nintendo, and I still have my GameCube, and I'm still discovering games I didn't even know existed, like Star Fox Assault. Literally, I discovered that game a year and a half ago, and I was so upset with myself. It's because I played the crap out of Star Fox Adventures up until the point where I got lost, and I got lost at the same point 10, 15 years later after the game came out. I played it recently and I'm lost at the same point. Maybe I should go on a FAQ or something. But I absolutely love the GameCube in its library because I love Nintendo. It was absolutely underrated. And I think it's usually because everything else is more of a powerhouse than Nintendo. But I think in this generation, Nintendo's cleaning up. They're going to clean up and they're going to shut down all of the naysayers and everything. So the GameCube, of course, was a great system, but it was highly overlooked. In this generation, Nintendo ain't having it anymore. Our next question comes from Twitter, from my man King of Troy 22, and that's my boy Justin, and he's helped out with the channel, and he says, will EA ever get their act together and stop pissing off their customers? I don't know. I honestly don't know, man. That crap with Star Wars, man, and I'm a Star Wars fan. I take off work every year to go see the new Star Wars movie, and then for me not to want to play the game because you have microtransactions and loot boxes, and it's just like required, and you're giving people advantages, unfair advantages. It's just, man, I hope that does not happen to Anthem. If you guys really want Anthem to be a success, don't pull that crap that you did with Star Wars Battlefront 2. Seriously. I looked at Anthem, it seemed up my alley, and then you pulled this crap with Star Wars Battlefront 2, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I kind of want to boycott these guys. Give me a reason not to boycott you guys, okay? Activision seems to kind of be doing the same thing, but that wasn't part of the question. EA, I need you guys to get it together. You guys were a great company once before when you had EA Sports Big, and I don't know where they are, and then you were doing some work with big, huge games, Kingdoms of Amalur. I talk about that on this channel. I love it. Where's that at? Listen, I need y'all to get y'all crap together, seriously, because I love some of the work that you guys have done. There's no more Dead Space, and who knows if we're going to get any more Mass Effect and any more Dragon Age. You got some great franchises that you guys can put out. Please stop ruining them with microtransactions. Don't do this any further. Seriously. My last question comes from Bearded Gamer, my man TJ, and he says, with the success of the Switch, do you see PlayStation possibly coming out with the next Vita or PSP, or are they staying out of the portable market? And honestly, I kind of want to say that it's a bit of a tough call because the PSP sold gangbusters. It sold a ton. I believe it sold in the 80 million mark. It didn't sell as much as the DS, but 80 million, you can't argue with those numbers. But everybody, you can't really obviously beat Nintendo in the portable market. Hence why they decided to make a hybrid, which I think is so freaking genius. It's a portable game system that you can put on your TV. And Nintendo always excels. Nobody is beating them. Nintendo is the ultimate champ at portable, and I really don't see anybody beating them. And I think the PS Vita was an amazing system. It just didn't sell that well, at least over here at the States. It's still selling pretty well over in Japan, but that's just one territory. Excuse me, guys. I have a bit of a cough, but I want to bring you guys the best content. And I know I'm a little hoarse because I've been talking, and it's just, I just want to fight it off, but I want to keep giving you guys the content. But I really think nobody can beat Nintendo. And I think if PlayStation comes back out with a PS Vita 2 or something like that, or PSP 2, something, they got to come hard and they have to work hard. The graphics better be astounding, and you gotta just back it up. They had some great games. They had Uncharted and Killzone, and a lot of games that was on the PS4 and PS3 was also on a PS Vita. And I think that they need to stick behind it. And I think it can ultimately be really, really great if they stick behind it. But if they don't, Nintendo's gonna chew them up and spit them out. All right, lads and ladettes. I want to thank y'all for tuning in once again. And this is the first time I'm answering you guys' questions, just to let you know what my views on different topics outside of Nintendo. And I would like you guys to like, share, subscribe, or even dislike if you're just not feeling it. Follow me on social media. Please leave some comments in below. Let's start a dialogue. Let's have further discussion. Let's see what's going on. Hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I am looking forward to hearing from you guys, speaking to you guys. And with that said, this video, finito.